Hey, what's up guys? So in the Saw movies, John Kramer, the main antagonist, says on multiple occasions that he has never killed anyone and that his gruesome death traps leave it up to the players to decide if they want to live.
I've never murdered anyone in my life. The decisions are up to them.
But sometimes that philosophy didn't really hold up. In this video, we'll look at some of the most unbeatable Saw traps. By the way, I'm not going to be counting any of the traps that were completely rigged, where there was no chance to escape, or any of the traps that happened in a dream sequence like Jill's death. We're only going to be counting the ones that technically were escapable, but were basically impossible if you were to follow the rules. One of the most unbeatable traps, which also left quite an impression on most people, is the needle pit from Saw 2.
It will be like finding a needle in a haystack.
In the trap, 5 people are locked in a room trying to get an antidote to the poisonous gas they're breathing. However, the shot they need is behind a locked door, and the key is at the bottom of a pool filled with needles. Now in my video of how to beat this trap, I mentioned that you can take a lot of the blankets in the room and wrap yourself in it in order to avoid getting pricked by the needles. However, the context of the trap might not really allow for that. What happens is that none of the 5 players want to go into the trap. Obviously. But then Xavier, the buff guy, throws Amanda inside and forces her to look for the key and won't let her out before. So if you're thrown in here by this dude, he's probably not going to react too kindly if you start wasting time by asking for protective blankets. And even though a blanket or something like that might protect you, rolling around in sharp metal and broken glass will still probably result in a few small cuts. And with that, you'll get the 5,000 diseases on those needles. But you know what? At least in the needle pit, you know what you're supposed to do. Because the original Saw had one trap that to a lot of people didn't even make any sense. And that is the flammable jelly trap.
Hello, Mark. If you're so sick, then why do I have so many photos of you up and about?
Now I've watched this movie quite a few times with different people, and nobody ever understands what the hell Mark is even supposed to do. He wakes up alone in this room covered in flammable jelly. We see that there are also a bunch of numbers on the wall. Now Mark has to try out every number combination on a safe to open it and escape. But there are countless permutations of how these numbers can be interpreted. Like, is this a 5 or a 65 or 57? Or is it a completely worthless number that's just written there to throw you off? Well, the only way to find out is to walk barefoot across the floor, which is covered in glass. And you might forget what the combination was. Maybe you're on this side of the room and you try to remember a new set of 6 numbers in the right order while you're holding a candle, which can't touch your skin or else you'll burn to death. This one is basically impossible. But there are some traps in the franchise that, while technically providing a very straightforward path to escaping, what you have to do in order to escape is completely insane. One of those traps is the 10 Pints of Sacrifice room in Saw 5. In this entry, 5 people wake up trapped in a mysterious dungeon where they have to get through 5 rooms with different death traps. However, the traps become increasingly more violent and extreme. The last one of these rooms is the 10 Pints of Sacrifice room. In it, Jigsaw explains how the last 2 people that are still alive must each drain 5 pints of blood out of their bodies by putting their hands on the saw blades in this box. In this scene, one of the characters realizes that if all 5 people would have survived, each person would only have to drain 2 pints out of their bodies. That still sounds awful. Just the act of putting your hand on a saw blade and then continuing to push it further is just crazy. I'm not doing that. Luckily, I had some ways to beat the trap, but the way it was set up shows that there were some unrealistic expectations from Jigsaw.
How much blood will you give in order to survive?
The scene had also one of the most intense conclusions, as when they're finished, the guy holds up his hand to reveal that his entire forearm has been sawed in half and it's slowly falling apart. There's also one detail in the first movie that's almost like an ongoing mystery, because it's quite weird and it has to do with Adam's key. In the first trap that we ever see in the franchise, Adam and Lawrence wake up in a decrepit bathroom chained by their ankles. You guys have heard this 1,000 times by now. Throughout the movie, they go through the trap, solving the different puzzles, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. But towards the end, it's revealed that there was a key to Adam's chain in the bathtub that he woke up in. However, when he got up, he pulled out the stopper and it went down the drain. There's a whole debate over why John would leave him the key, as it could really change the entire dynamic of the movie. And in this trap, Lawrence is given a choice. He either has to kill Adam in 6 hours, or something like that, or he will never see his family again and die here. But Adam isn't really given the same option. All he has to do is survive. So there's nothing he can really do to determine his own future. The choice is very much not his, but it's decided by Lawrence. So most of what he can do is just sit here and hope for the best.
So you're going to watch yourself die today, Adam? Or do something about it?
I don't get it.
But I think Saw is most well known for these small and contained traps. They're probably the scariest. One of these is the extremely bulky Venus flytrap. In Saw 2, which was quite a shocking sequel to the relatively tame first one, Michael wakes up in a dark room with a mask around his head. As he panics, the TV turns on and it's explained that the mask will snap shut and kill him in 60 seconds, unless he can get the key to unlock it, and it's located behind his eye. On top of that, the only tool to retrieve it is a scalpel. So again, there is a way out, but what you have to do is quite extreme. I had some methods for how to beat it, but this was one of those traps where there really was no safe way to escape, even if you follow all the rules as John Kramer would like you to.
To give up the one thing you rely on in order to go on living. The device around your neck is a death mask.
Next is the knife chair from Saw 4. Even though the fourth entry was a little bit slow and not quite as interesting as the other ones in my opinion, this trap definitely stood out. It happened in a flashback. Actually, I think it happens in a flashback within a flashback where we follow a guy called Cecil. It's revealed that he had a very negative impact on John's and a lot of other people's lives. So in turn, John put him into this trap. This one really demonstrates how these smaller traps tend to be the ones that are much more difficult to beat. Cecil is restrained and almost every move he makes can kill him. He's sitting in a chair with blades under his arms, which are tied to the armrests. Then a box full of knives is put in front of his face, and the only way to get out is to push his head through the knives and hit a lever at the end, which releases him. The most surprising part, and the reason this isn't higher on the list, is that he actually does make it out alive. But then he runs into a tub full of razor wire and dies. Okay, so now we're down to the really insane traps. One of these is the second to last trap from Saw 3D. This one is also part of a larger test. In Saw 3D, Bobby Dagan, a person falsely claiming to have survived a Saw trap, has to go through a real game. After the first few tests, Bobby lands in a room where he must open a door which requires a code. It's 4 digits, and on the wall in the room is a chart of the human mouth. It's then explained to him that the numbers are on his teeth, and the only way to get the code is to rip them out. Oh, and it's not any of the smaller teeth in front. No, it's his wisdom teeth way in the back.
Watch and learn, Bobby.
The only tool he's given is a set of pliers, and if he doesn't rip them out, his wife will die. This was one of the few traps in the franchise where I had nothing on how to beat it. My only solution was to remove only one tooth and then cycle through the last 100 combinations manually by quickly entering them. But even if it's just one tooth, that's still extremely painful. And the sound design was really visceral in this one. You hear all the crackling and crunching. It was pretty bad. I think I might have watched this one after my wisdom teeth removal, which was not done like this, and I thought, well, I got off pretty easy. It could have been worse. Anyway, another trap that was surprisingly well designed was the bedroom trap in Saw 4. This was one of the strangest moments in the Saw series because it's one of the very few times where the main character, in this case Rig, puts someone into a trap instead of trying to help them out. He forces Ivan, the fat guy, into this really strange trap in this bed where his head is fixed by a vise and his limbs are on these mechanical arms. What he has to do is, in a very short time, press 2 triggers to activate 2 spikes which will poke out his eyes, making him blind. Or he can do nothing and wait until the time runs out, which will trigger the arms and rip all of his limbs off. Since you're completely chained up in this trap, there is basically nothing you can do. It's one of the weirdest, most elaborate, but also well-designed traps in the series. And Ivan gets the worst possible ending. He pokes out one of his eyes, but before he can remove the other one, the time runs out and his limbs are ripped off. Thankfully, not all the violent traps in Saw show a lot of blood. For example, in Saw 3D, there's a trap called the Silent Circle. What Bobby must do here is pull on a string. Oh, and that string is connected to a hook, which is inside a woman's stomach. So he has to rip out this hook, which is going to tear up this woman's entire throat. There wasn't that much to see here, but what it did show was enough to make everyone want to look away. But the most unbeatable trap that I have seen was the classroom trap from Saw 3. It's the first thing we see in the movie. In the trap, a man is chained up in a school classroom. On the table in front of him is a bomb that will explode in a short amount of time. What he has to do to escape is rip out all of the rings attached to him. Some of them are simpler and are connected to his arm skin, but the last one is connected to his mouth. Now there is no way for him to remove this chain unless he were to rip out his entire jaw. But this would most likely result in his death anyway. And I had pretty much nothing on how to escape this one, because there is absolutely no way out. And this was still one of the traps that I believe was set up by John Kramer, whereas a lot of the other ones are done by Hoffman and Amanda. Now these were of course not all of the ones that were nearly impossible to beat, but were some of my favorites. As always, I hope you liked it and that I get to see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.